Chapter 23, Magic. Dr. Craven had been waiting some time at the house when they returned to it. He had indeed begun to wonder if it might not be wise to send someone out to explore the garden paths when Colin was brought back to his room. The poor man looked him over seriously. "You should not have stayed so long," he said. "You must not overexert yourself." "I am not tired at all," said Colin. "It has made me well. Tomorrow I'm going out in the morning as well as in the afternoon." "I am not sure that I can allow it," answered Dr. Craven. "I'm afraid it would not be wise." "It would not be wise for you to try to stop me," said Colin, quite seriously. "I am going." Even Mary had found out that one of Colin's chief peculiarities was that he did not know in the least what a rude little beast he was with the way of ordering people about. He had lived on sort of a desert island all of his life, and as he had been the king of it, he'd made his own manners and had had no one to compare himself to. Mary had indeed been rather like him herself, and since she had been at Misselthwaite had gradually discovered that her own manners had not been of the kind which were usual or popular. Having made this discovery, she naturally thought of it of interest to communicate to Colin. So she sat and she looked at him curiously for a few minutes after Dr. Craven had gone. She wanted to make him ask her why she was doing it, and of course he did. "Why are you looking at me for?" he said. "I'm looking and I'm thinking that I'm rather sorry for Dr. Craven." "So am I," said Colin calmly, but not without an air of some satisfaction. "He won't get Misselthwaite at all now that I'm not going to die." "I'm sorry for him because of that, of course," she said. "But I was thinking just then that it must have been very horrid to have had to be polite for 10 years to a boy who was always so very rude. I would never have done it." "Am I rude?" Colin inquired undisturbedly. "You know, if you had been his own boy, and he had been a slapping sort of man," Mary said, "he would have slapped you." "Oh, he daren't," said Colin. "No, he daren't," answered Mistress Mary, thinking the thing out quite without prejudice. "Nobody ever dared to do anything you didn't like, because you were going to die and things like that. You were such a poor thing." "But," announced Colin stubbornly, "I am not going to be a poor thing. I won't let people think I'm one. I stood on my feet this afternoon." "It is always having your own way that has made you so strange," Mary went on, thinking aloud. Colin turned his head, frowning. "Am I strange?" he demanded. "Yes," answered Mary, "very. But you needn't be cross," she added impartially, "because so I am strange, and so is Ben Weatherstaff, but I am not as strange as I was before I began to like people and before I found the garden." "Well, I don't want to be strange," said Colin. "I'm not going to be." And he frowned again with determination. He was a very proud boy. He lay thinking for a while, and then Mary saw his beautiful smile begin and gradually change his whole face. "I shall stop being strange," he said, "if I go every day to the garden. Well, there's magic in there, good magic. You know, Mary, I am sure there is." "So am I," said Mary. "Even if it isn't real magic," Colin said, "we can pretend it is. Something is there. Something." "It's magic," said Mary, "but it's not black magic. It's as white as snow." They always called it magic, and indeed it seemed like in the months that followed, the wonderful months, the radiant months, the amazing ones. Oh, the things which happened in that garden. If you have never had a garden, then you cannot understand. And if you have had a garden, you will know that it would take a whole book to describe all that came to pass there. At first it seemed that green things would never cease pushing their way through the earth, in the grass, in the beds, even in the crevices of the walls. Then the green things began to show buds, and the buds began to unfurl and show color. Every shade of blue, every shade of purple, every tint and hue of crimson. In its happy days, flowers had been tucked away into every inch and hole and corner. Ben Weatherstaff had seen it done, and had himself scraped out mortar from between the bricks of the wall and made pockets of earth for lovely clinging things to grow on. Iris and white lilies rose out of the grass in sheaves, and the green alcoves filled themselves with amazing armies of the blue and white flower lances of tall delphiniums, columbines, and campanillas. She was main fond of 'em, she was, Ben Weatherstaff said. She liked them things that was always pointing up to the blue sky, she used to tell. Not as she was one of 'em, 'cause she looked down on the earth, not her. She just loved it, but she said the blue sky always looks so joyful. The seeds that Deacon and Mary had planted grew as if fairies tended them. Satiny poppies of all tints danced in the breeze by the score, gaily defying flowers which had lived in the garden for years, and which, it might be confessed, seemed rather to wonder how such new people had got there. And the roses, oh, the roses, rising out of the grass, tangled round the sundial, wreathing the tree trunks and hanging from their branches, climbing up the walls and spreading over them with long garlands, falling in cascades. They came alive day by day, hour by hour. Fair, fresh leaves and buds, oh, the buds! Tiny at first, but swelling and working magic until they burst and uncurled into cups of scent, delicately spilling themselves over their brims and filling the garden air. Colin saw it all, watching each change as it took place. Every morning he was brought out, and every hour of each day when it didn't rain he spent in the garden. Even gray days pleased him. He would lie on the grass watching things growing, he said. If you watched long enough, he declared, you could see buds unsheathe themselves. Also, you could make the acquaintance of strange, busy insect things, running about on various unknown but evidently very serious errands, sometimes carrying tiny scraps of straw or feather or food, or climbing blades of grass as if they were trees from whose tops one could look out and explore the country. A mole throwing up its mound at the end of its burrow, and making its way out at last with the long nailed paws which looked so much like elfish hands, had absorbed him one whole morning. Ants' ways, beetles' ways, bees' ways, frogs' ways, birds' ways, plants' ways, gave him a new world to explore, and when Deacon revealed them all, and added foxes' ways, otters' ways, ferrets' ways, squirrels' ways, and trouts and water rats and badgers' ways, there was no end to the things to talk about and to think over. And this was not half the magic. The fact that he had really once stood on his feet had set Colin to thinking tremendously, and when Mary told him of the spells she had worked, he was excited and approved of it greatly. He talked of it constantly. Of course, there must be lots of magic in the world, he said wisely one day, but people don't know what it is. They don't know what it's like or how to make it. Perhaps the beginning is to just say nice things are going to happen until you make them happen. I am going to try an experiment. The next morning, when they went out to the secret garden, he sent at once for Ben Weatherstaff. Ben came as quickly as he could and found the Rajah standing on his feet under a tree and looking very grand, but very beautifully smiling. "Good morning, Ben Weatherstaff," he said. "I want you and Deacon and Miss Mary to stand in a row and listen to me, because I'm going to tell you something very important." "Aye, aye, sir," answered Ben Weatherstaff, touching his forehead. One of the long-concealed charms of Ben Weatherstaff was that in his boyhood he had once run away to the sea and made voyages so he could reply like a sailor. "I am going to try a scientific experiment," explained the Rajah. "When I grow up, I am going to make great scientific discoveries, and I am going to begin now with this experiment." "Aye, aye, sir," said Ben Weatherstaff promptly, though this was the first time he had heard of scientific discoveries. It was the first time Mary had heard of them too, but even at this stage she had begun to realize that, strange as he was, Colin had read about a great many singular things, and was somehow a very convincing sort of boy. When he held his head up, and he fixed his strange eyes on you, it seemed as if you believed in him, almost in spite of yourself, though he were only 10 years old, going on 11. At that moment he was especially convincing because he suddenly felt the fascination of actually making a sort of speech, like a grown-up person. "The great scientific discoveries I am going to make," he went on, "will be about magic. Magic is a great thing, and scarcely anyone knows anything about it except a few people in old books. And Mary a little, because she was born in India where there are fakirs. I believe Deacon knows some magic, but perhaps he doesn't know he knows it. He charms animals and people. I would never have let him come to see me if he had not been an animal charmer, which is a boy charmer too, because a boy is an animal. I am sure there is magic in everything, only we have not sense enough to get hold of it and make it do things for us, like electricity and horses and steam." This sounded so imposing that Ben Weatherstaff became quite excited and really could not keep still. "Aye, aye, sir," he said, and began to stand up quite straight. "When Mary found this garden it looked quite dead," the orator proceeded. "Then something began pushing things up out of the soil and making things out of nothing. One day things weren't there, and another they were. I had never watched things before, and it made me feel very curious. Scientific people are always curious, and I am going to be scientific. I kept saying to myself, 'What is it? What is it? It's something. It can't be nothing.' I don't know its name, so I call it magic. I've never seen the sunrise, but Mary and Deacon have, and from what they tell me, I am sure that that's magic too. Something pushes it up and draws it. Something, since I've been in the garden, I've also looked up through the trees at the sky, and I've had this strange feeling of being happy, as if something were pushing and drawing in my chest and making me breathe fast. Magic is always pushing and drawing and making things out of nothing. Everything is made out of magic. Leaves and trees, flowers and birds, badgers and foxes and squirrels and people. So it must be all around us, in this garden, in all the places. The magic in this garden has made me stand up, and I know I am going to live to be a man. I am going to make scientific experiment of trying to get some of it and put it in myself and make it push and draw me and make me strong. I don't know how to do it, but I think that if you keep thinking about it and calling it, perhaps it will come. Perhaps that is the first baby way to get in. When I was going to try to stand that first time, Mary kept saying to herself as fast as she could, 'You can do it, you can do it,' and I did. I had to try myself at the same time, of course, but her magic helped me. And so did Deacon's. Every morning and evening, and as often in the daytime as I can remember, I am going to say, 'Magic is in me. Magic is making me well. I am going to be as strong as Deacon, and you must all do it too. That is my experiment. Will you help, Ben Weatherstaff?'" "Aye, aye, sir," said Ben Weatherstaff. "Aye, aye."